Hello and welcome into this edition of Catamount Football Weekly as we talk Western Carolina Catamount football with head coach Mark Spear. I'm your host, Daniel Hooker. And coach, you call it a bye week, you call it an open week, but I don't think you could call it an off week for the Catamount football team. After that loss to ETSU, you had a week off in terms of not playing, but you guys didn't take any time off during the week.
Well, no, I think it was a very productive week, a week we needed as a football team. Our number one goal was to get our football team as healthy as we could get us going into this big matchup against Citadel coming up this week. And for the most part, we did that. We still have a few guys that, are going to be questionable for Saturday, but we got a lot of guys healthy, and that was huge for us, number one. And everybody, I'm sure Citadel was the same way. They had an off week, and this time of year coming out of preseason and your first games in the heat, and early on you continue to take a little bit of the preseason mentality of I know we go full pads on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we still do good versus good, meaning our 1-0 versus 1D, even though it not necessarily may be the same looks that you're getting from your opponent, but we just feel that still early in the season you need that reps of getting good speed, good quality looks, and continuing to teach that tackling, blocking, the physical parts of football. And as the season goes on, you do less and less of that. But so everybody's banged up, and it's how you manage that open week. And I think our staff did a nice job of that. As I said, we got most of our guys healthy. And then, it was just really big on the mental part. I don't think, and I told our team after the disappointing loss, our problem's not being physical. Our problem's not, we're not strong enough, we're not fast enough to compete in this league. Right now, as coaches and as players, we're not doing things mentally that you have to go do to win Southern Conference football games. We went back to teaching a lot of just basics, reteaching fundamentals, as coaches rethinking what we're asking players to do, and then challenging our leadership on our team to step up to the plate as far as communicating with us as coaches what we may be overcoaching or what we're not doing a good enough job in this communication, where I tell them all the time, we can talk to somebody in China right now, yet we can screw up a verbal communication 3 feet away. So I think the biggest thing is us communicating, being on the same page, and then just at times in that East Tennessee game, we lost our composure in the fact that we had players just that panicked a little bit and went and did things that they couldn't explain even why they did them. And that's the frustrating part. But in the end, that's the coach's job. Our job is to get our players prepared, have them an easy, simple game plan where they can go play fast and use the speed that our football team has. If you're not thinking fast, you're not playing fast. And I don't care, sometimes as coaches we take a 4.5 40 guy, and by making him think too much, turn him into a 5 flat guy. And so we've done a lot of soul-searching, self-evaluation, but I tell you what, we had a great week of practice. Our guys practiced like we were a 3-0 football team. And that's when you got a chance, as our guys weren't sticking their lips out. They weren't pointing the fingers at everybody else, everybody from coaches down to our scout team football players took ownership of that loss. And we went out and had a great week of practice, got a lot done. We had a Friday morning 5:45 a.m. Workout. We gave them Friday afternoon and Saturday off, but we went and did competition. I didn't want our football team to get away from that feeling of competing and what it takes to win. So we had what we called an all you got as long as it takes competition this past Friday morning at 5:45, and I was at a point getting ready to say, no, let's don't do it. Let's give them the whole weekend off. But then I wanted to see what our leadership of our players, how our players would respond to getting up at 5:45 on Friday morning, their weekend off. And it was awesome how our guys showed up. They competed for about an hour. There's a lot of offense versus defense, and they were out there singing, they were chanting. It was like the first morning, the first practice you have when there's always that excitement. So for me, I'm glad we did it because it showed me we still have a hungry football team. We have a football team that knows we have nowhere reached our capacity. And, those are the signs that, hey, we got a chance.
Coach, before we look at this week's opponent with the Citadel Bulldogs, a very good football team, nationally ranked inside the top 10. Before we talk about the Bulldogs, I want to take a step back and do something we didn't do a week ago. Wanted to hit upon your redshirt freshman quarterback in Tyree Adams coming in. Right now leading the conference in total offense. Right now 900 and some odd passing yards, over 1,100 yards total offense. By comparison, Troy Mitchell, who he set behind a year ago, had about 1,200 yards for the whole season as a freshman. And so when you could do the compare and contrast, right now ahead of pace with Troy Mitchell, who is our all-time leader in terms of total offense. But what have you seen out of Tyree? What has made him successful coming out of that battle with Wes Holcomb beginning of the season?
Well, Tyree has such composure in decision-making. I told you after the East Carolina game, our biggest unknown was what will he do because he's so athletic. What will he do when the pass rush gets to him? What will he do when he's seeing a lot of different coverages, a lot of different blitzes? And a lot of athletic quarterbacks, their natural instinct is to take their eyes off their reads and rely on their feet to get them out of trouble. And, man, he has passed that test with flying colors. His composure in the pocket, his composure pre-snap, his preparation going into ball games has been outstanding. Not just for a freshman, for any quarterback. When that rush was around him at East Carolina, Gardner-Webb, at East Tennessee State, you can see his eyes. That's something that Coach Glenn and we look at is where's his eyes? Does his eyes go to those big old suckers trying to throw him down, or is his eyes still down the field reading the coverage and working the pocket with his feet, yet his eyes are still down the field? What he has shown is that composure, and that's the one thing that is the hardest to teach a quarterback. You can teach a quarterback his footwork in the pocket. You can teach a quarterback how to change his throwing motion. You can teach a quarterback, when's the right time to get in and out of the pocket. But to teach a quarterback to have that calmness, that's just God-given ability, and he's got it. And that's when, you got something special, because he is a guy that has a really good arm. He can throw those intermediate routes. As a freshman, Troy had a hard time as a freshman. Troy was better at throwing those quick routes and outside routes, but because of Troy's height and sometimes Troy's inexperience, he had trouble those crossing routes over the middle, where Tyree's really good at that. And throwing the intermediate stuff. And so, we just think we've got a gem in Tyree, and the other part is he's a leader. When I did our exit interview last year with our seniors, we had 17 seniors, Troy being one of them. I asked every one of those seniors, who will be our leader? Who's going to be one of our leaders next year? And here was Tyree Adams, a redshirt freshman, who has not taken a snap at this point at Western Carolina University. And I had 15 of the 17 seniors tell me that a rising redshirt freshman who had not won a starting job yet, we had 3 at the time, Wes and Kalen Whitlow, who was still on the team, tell me that whether that guy was our starting quarterback or not would be a leader of this football team. So that's the biggest thing. Plus, I will say this to Troy's defense. I think Tyree's got a few more weapons around him than maybe Troy had when we're not knocking that first group we had, but when Troy got here, he didn't have the preseason player of the year in the backfield. He didn't have, we've had a couple of guys go off and play, get shots in the NFL, with Josh Weinberg, with Kenara Spence, and and we didn't have, I guess, 10 preseason all-conference guys. So, maybe the Tyree's was dealt a little bit better hand than Troy. And the other part is, I think Troy really mentored Tyree. And I think Troy takes a lot of pride in what Tyree's doing right now. Troy was came back for the East Carolina and Gardner-Webb game. And that's when your program's headed in the right directions, when your former players are flying back from Houston, Texas to see us play and to see the guys that Troy helped mentor. So, we're excited about our future there.
Well, you talk about the importance of the quarterback position. I think when you look at what the Citadel does offensively, it really keys around a quarterback, and having a solid quarterback to run that triple option attack, knowing when to hand off the dive, knowing when to keep it, knowing when to pitch it, and being able to plant that foot and drop back for a pass. Talk about the Citadel Bulldogs triple option. It's a little bit different. We're going to see option in back-to-back weeks with the Citadel and then the Wofford Terriers, but a little bit different style with the Citadel Bulldogs.
Well, Coach Thompson has taken over a team that he helped Mike Houston build. Mike was a local guy from right around here in Cullowhee. His wife's from Silva, and Mike was from Franklin. And Mike went down along with Brent Thompson, and they did a great job recruiting, number one, and understood what it takes to be at a military institution. Coach Thompson has coached at other military institutions, and they understand the mission of Citadel. And just like here at Western, where fit is so much a part of our recruiting, and because of where we're geographically located, and I think our staff's done a great job of recruiting young men that fit Western. Coach Houston and his staff started that, and then Coach Thompson's just picked right up where they left off and hasn't missed a beat. And they have really good football players, and they know what they're doing with this offense. It's a very difficult offense to stop. It's one that you have to be very disciplined as a defensive unit, and you have to be very patient and very composed, and that's what we had problems with last week there in East Tennessee State. There was times where it really wasn't our defense was broke. We just had to be patient and keep believing in the process, and we had some guys that wanted to go make some plays, so to speak, and they weren't doing it within our defense. And those are the things that will get you killed and embarrassed in a big way playing against Citadel in this type of offense, because what they do is inherently they're recruiting a military type person who is a very disciplined and focused young man, and they run an offense that relies on the defense getting a little bit out of shape. We have to build what we call a fence. You're trying to build a fence with no cracks in the dam, as we put it. And what happens is water finds that hole in the dam. A good option football team does the same thing. And they'll have dives. They're coming out with their linemen who are very athletic. They're cutting, they're chopping linebackers and defensive linemen's legs, getting you on the ground. They're hitting fast with a explosive fullback in Renew. And then they're running a 2-quarterback system right now, and the quarterbacks have a read whether they give the handoff or not, and then it goes on down the line. They're reading progressions, and that's all they do. And one of the hardest things to do is to get your scout team to simulate that, and that's what having that open day was really about, as much as our defense learning to play the Citadel was getting our scout team to simulate the look. And I tell you what, it's probably as good a job as I've ever been around with our scout team. I praised our scout team yesterday about how much pride they were taking in trying to give our defense the best look. I told our scout team, you're going to decide whether we win this football game this week. So if we're able to beat Citadel this week, I already know who our player of the game will be. It'll be that offensive scout team. But defensively, it's a game where we have to be patient. I told our defense, Citadel's going to gain yardage. They're going to gain yardage. If by any stretch of the imagination we think we're going to hold them to under 100 yards rushing, we're going to have a bad game because we're going to be disappointed, and we're going to start doing things that are going to hurt us instead of help us. So I think a big part of playing the Citadel's offense, you have to, number one, let your defense know what they're getting in the ring with. Let them know that they're going to get some drives, but we got to stay within our defense. And then when you make that big play and get them in long yardage, that's when we have the upper hand, because they're not built to, not that they can't throw the ball, but that's not what they like to do. And you want to get them into an uncomfortable spot. Then defensively, they fly around. They play hard. They play aggressive. Blake Carroll's their defensive coordinator. Went to school at Franklin High School, is a Western Carolina graduate, and does a terrific job on defense. They're just solid. They play hard. They play aggressive. They're really good tacklers. They got one of the best players in the league in FCS in their corner, D. Delaney, is an outstanding cover corner, a ball hawk in getting interceptions. And you have to earn everything. And then what happens is, because of the nature of their offense and how they run the clock and eat up yardage, our offense is limited to numbers of possessions by probably anywhere from three possessions a half. So you're taking away 6 possessions that our offense normally gets. So offensively, we have to be very efficient. We have to not kill ourselves with penalties, and not take advantage of every drive that we have offensively. We've got to get off to a great start. And then in the kicking game, the last 2 ball games, they've scored in special teams. Against Furman and Gardner-Webb, they've scored special teams touchdowns. So they do a tremendous job all the way around, and it's going to be a tremendous task, but we're excited about it. We're always love the opportunity to play in here at E.J. Whitmire Stadium here in the Wee, and we're expecting a huge crowd, and you get excited about playing at home against a top 10 football team. What an opportunity! As bad as we were coaching and getting our players to play mentally sound, disciplined football, we're going to see if we got that fixed this weekend against a team that's going to make us be disciplined, and we're excited about that.
So again, Western Carolina hosting the 9th ranked in one poll, 10th ranked in another. The Citadel Bulldogs come to town. Family weekend football here from E.J. Whitmire Stadium, Bob Waters Field. You can listen to the ball game on the Catamount Sports Network with the 2:30 airtime. You can also watch this weekend's game live on ESPN3. But we want you here in the Cullowhee Valley as Western Carolina and the Citadel battle in Southern Conference action. 3:30 kickoff from E.J. Whitmire Stadium, Bob Waters Field. While you're online here at CatamountSports.com, click on the ticket button. Go ahead and buy your tickets for this weekend. You can print them online, avoid the long lines, and we'll see you in Cullowhee this weekend. For the coach, I'm Daniel Hooker saying so long for now on this week's edition of Catamount Football Weekly.